On a Tuesday morning in the summer of 1954, a radio programmer in Memphis named Gerald Simms pulled a record from the playback stack and put it aside. He had listened to 30 seconds of it. He did not play it on air. "This isn't music," he told his assistant. "This is noise." The record was "That's All Right" by Elvis Presley. Gerald Simms worked in Memphis radio for 20 years after that morning. He built a respectable career. He programmed stations that played the music he believed in, the carefully arranged, professionally produced, genre-appropriate music of a man who understood what radio was for. He watched Elvis Presley become the most famous person in America. He watched him from the specific distance of someone who had held the record in his hands and put it aside. In 1975, Gerald Simms retired. He was 63 years old. He had spent his retirement in a house in East Memphis that he had bought with the proceeds of a career in which he had, by any measure, succeeded. In 1976, a journalist from a music magazine came to Memphis to write a retrospective on the Sun Records era. He was interviewing people who had been in the Memphis music world in the early 1950s. Someone gave him Gerald's name. Gerald agreed to be interviewed. The interview lasted 2 hours. It covered the development of Memphis radio in the post-war period. It covered the rise of Sun Records and Sam Phillips. It covered the economics of programming in the segregated radio market of the early 1950s. Near the end of the interview, the journalist asked Gerald about the moment the Memphis radio landscape changed, about the record that split the city into before and after. Gerald was quiet for a moment. "I had that record in my hands," he said. The journalist looked at him. "The original pressing," Gerald said. "Sam Phillips brought it around personally. He said it was the most important thing he'd ever produced." He paused. "I listened to 30 seconds of it, and I told him it was noise." The journalist said nothing. Gerald looked at his hands. "I've been in this business for 30 years, he said. "I've made a lot of decisions. I've programmed a lot of music. And that is the only decision I have thought about every single day." He was quiet for a long time. "Not because of the career," he said. "I know what people think, that I missed the boat, that I could have been the man who launched Elvis. That's not why. I think about it because of what it tells me about what I was, what I thought music was, what I thought deserved to be heard. I thought music was supposed to sound like what I already knew, and anything that didn't, I called it noise." He looked at the journalist. 30 seconds, he said. I gave it 30 seconds. The interview was published in the magazine's retrospective issue. It received, at the time, modest attention. One paragraph, among many paragraphs about many people. But the recording of the full interview, made by the journalist on a cassette recorder, sat in a box of materials that were eventually donated to a Memphis music archive in the late 1990s. In 2006, a researcher working on the archive came across the cassette. She cataloged it. She listened to the full 2 hours. And in the last 20 minutes of the recording, she found something that had not been included in the published article. After Gerald had talked about the 30 seconds, after he had said what it told him about what he was, the journalist had asked a follow-up question. He had asked, "If you could go back, what would you have done?" Gerald was quiet for a very long time, long enough that the journalist had started to formulate a different question. I would have listened longer, Gerald said. That's all. I would have listened past the 30 seconds. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't hear in 30 seconds, was that it wasn't noise. It was a new language, and I didn't speak it. So I called it noise. He was quiet for a moment. That's what we do, he said. When we don't understand something, we call it noise, and we put it aside. Gerald Simms died in 1989. He was 77 years old. His obituary in the Memphis Commercial Appeal described him as a respected figure in Memphis broadcasting, a man who had shaped the city's radio landscape across 3 decades. It did not mention the record he had put aside in 1954. The full cassette recording of the 1976 interview is held in the Memphis Music Archive. It has been transcribed and cataloged. It is available to researchers. Not many researchers have found it, but the ones who have describe a consistent experience when they reach the last 20 minutes. The experience of sitting with something that Gerald Simms spent 30 years carrying, and that he finally, in a small East Memphis living room in 1976, put down. Not the regret of a missed opportunity, the regret of a man who had decided, before he had fully listened, that he already knew. Sam Phillips, who had personally brought the record to Gerald's station, was asked about Gerald in an interview many years later. He was asked if he was bitter about the rejection. Phillips was quiet for a moment. "No," he said. "Gerald did what people do. He heard something he didn't understand, and he made a decision. The decision was wrong, but the impulse was human. The question," Sam Phillips said, "is whether you're willing to listen past 30 seconds. Most people aren't." Elvis Presley's "That's All Right" was eventually played by Dewey Phillips, no relation to Sam, on his radio program Red, Hot, and Blue on WHBQ Memphis. He played it 14 times in one night because the phones would not stop. The response was unlike anything Memphis radio had ever seen. Gerald Simms listened to it that night, alone, in his living room, on his own radio. He listened to the whole song. Then he listened to it again, 14 times that night, same as everyone else. He understood it. Past the 30 seconds, he understood it completely. It was just a little late.